Let me turn now to our featured modeler tonight, Pete Steinmetz. He owns Dead Rail Installs. Well, I've been trying to find somebody to come on and talk about Dead Rail for an awful long time. So, Pete, I can't thank you enough for being here tonight, and I'm really looking forward to for you sharing with us information about Dead Rail. And for all of you painters out there, Pete's agreed to come back another time later and talk about his painting and his weathering. So thank you so much for doing that too, Pete.
Well, I'd like to first of all thank Jeff. That was a great clinic. I work with LEDs a lot and do the coloring and all that, but I sure learned a lot from him. So thanks, Jeff.
You're very
Appreciate it.
welcome.
I'm Pete Steinmetz. I own a company called Dead Rail Installs. Whoops, wrong way. Anyway, yeah, backwards. I might give you a bit of background. My background, my basically career was in rechargeable batteries and worked for a number of different companies, was involved in the development of lithium ion, lithium polymer technology, spent a lot of time in China surveying factories and saw some really great factories and saw some horror shows. So I was working in OEM sales, primarily medical, and ran into a guy named Mike Faub at a train show in Del Mar, California. Mike was working with CVP Airwire. They had just miniaturized a lot of their components so that they were suitable for going into 0 and 30 scale, for instance. And Mike said, "Here, try this." So I ran a train around. It was pretty cool, and I kind of tucked it away. And a year later, same thing. And then unfortunately, Mike came down with mesothelioma. He still worked right up until the end, and then all of a sudden there was a big void. And a couple of guys in our Dead Rail Society group in San Diego said, "Well, why don't you do it?" And I thought, I'm pretty busy. I don't know if I want to do this. I was thinking about, starting to think about retirement and all that. And I said, well, I'll do it part-time. Well, here I am, part-time. I work about 60 hours a week. I've developed some new products, work with Blue Rail Trains, work with CVP Airwire, Tam Valley Depot, Soundtracks, TCS, and primarily I do both installs, but I'd really like people to buy kits and do it themselves. It's not that difficult. I can get a kit out the door pretty quickly, but if you want me to do the install, my backlog is pretty long. So what I like to do is I'm going to screen share and I'm going to go through a presentation rather quickly, and then we can get into some discussion because I know people, everybody's situation is a little different. People are going to have a lot of questions. We can discuss batteries and battery safety towards the end because I know that's a big thing with people. So I'm going to share my screen and hey, dang, it works. Everybody see that?
Yep.
You can. Okay, super. Worked the first time. If you want to adjust your screen, if it's off to the side or cockeyed, you can go up to the top and you can go fit to screen. It's just a little pull down menu. So I'm going to give a brief history of battery powered radio control or remote control as it's getting to be. Why so long for the smaller scales, the advantages of Dead Rail. We're going to review some systems and let's see, PowerPoint slideshow.
It's up on top.
Yeah, I see it. Somebody was trying to call me and it kind of took all of this out. Okay, so Dead Rail Society. Bob Treat in San Diego, who's a fairly well-known G-scale modeler, did the logo for us. Come on, there we go. So it started in large scales. The G-scale guys have been doing battery power for a long time because they didn't have size limitations. I started working with the G-scale guys doing motorcycle batteries and box cars. Everything was big, wouldn't fit in the smaller scales. The PCBs got smaller. They got a lot smaller. Batteries got smaller. The guys are running lead acid at first, and then NiCad, then nickel hydride, all of which are pretty big for what you get. When lithium polymer matured, we could do O and 30, S, HO and 3, and we're doing some stuff with N-scale now. Works with DCC and sound, no interference, operating a dead rail on a DC or DCC layout. There are some stories about guys saying, oh, you can't run that on here because it'll mess up our DCC, and it will not, because it has nothing to do with it through the track power. So minimal track cleaning was a huge advantage. No power to the rails, that's another advantage. Less wiring. I like to get the guys that are just starting to think about doing a layout and talk to them about, do you like to spend time underneath your layout with hot solder dropping onto your lap? Or would you rather be running trains? Battery power is very reliable. When you're building a new layout, it's really less cost than going through all of the components. And you can operate your Loco, you can take it to somebody else's layout and run it there. Major North American suppliers, Blue Rail Trains, Tam Valley Depot, Airwire, which is CVP Airwire, and SCAB. Secondary supplier is Deltang in the UK, although they've seemed to falter because some of their components have been discontinued. They need to redesign their boards. So they really have kind of dropped off the North American scene of prominence. Dead Rail Online, there's a Dead Rail Society Groups.io. There's a very active Facebook group, Dead Rail Society. Free Rails Forum has some Dead Rail on it, and deadrailsociety.com. So SCAB was developed by Neil Stanton, and it was really the first reliable dead rail system in smaller scales. He recommends charging through the rails and has a battery BPS using a single cell. And it works fine. Tam Valley Depot, they have a DRS-1 radio receiver. They have a DRS-1 radio transmitter. You need one transmitter per layout, and all it does is take your DCC signal that would be going through the track, and it sends it through the airwaves to a receiver. Everything else is the same. You can run them both at the same time. No issues there. Works with all DC systems. Operates on 916.49 and the 869 megahertz, which is primarily a Euro frequency. As I said, they can run at the same time, compatible with sound and non-sound decoders. CVP Airwire, long history with radio control trains. They're an established manufacturer. They've been around for a long time. They turned their attention to smaller scales, and it's very well thought out. They have a multi-function radio, which I will show you. Works with any NMRA standard decoder, and they have 3 sizes of what they call converters, which are receivers. This is the smallest size, which is rated at 1.5 amps. You can see it compared next to a quarter, and the measurements are down here. Easy to hook up. Battery into the converter, goes into your decoder. Decoder normally orange and gray to the motor, your LEDs, your speaker, and what you do is you just clip your track power. You just disconnect that because you're running off a battery. This is a picture of the Tam Valley, or the CVP T5000, which is a very versatile controller. For guys, when I have people call me and we're going over what system's going to fit their needs the best, I ask them if they want a knob. Do they want to control it with a phone? Do you want to control it with something that has a knob? Do you want to control it with your existing DCC controllers? A lot of guys opt for this, for the knob. Whoops. I need to move something here. Okay, we're going to talk about Blue Rail Trains for a minute. Blue Rail Trains is DCC, and it's controlled by an iOS device, meaning something that comes out of Apple. an iPhone, an iPad, an iPod. Sound requires an NMRA compliant sound decoder, but it can be used what we call in basic mode, where it is a motor decoder and it will control your lights. So you just buy one receiver, and you can either hook it up to a sound decoder, or you can put it in basic mode and use it as a motor decoder. The boards are available in 2 amp and 5 amp. Very small 2 amp receiver is 1.5 by 0.57. I'll show you that in a minute. The 5 amp board is 2.75 by 1.35. They're available both with an internal and an external antenna, which is, the external antenna increases your range somewhat, but not necessary, especially indoors. The app is available in the App Store. It updates automatically. The app is free. And we work pretty constantly on updating the app to add new features. Website is bluerailtrains.com. I don't know why this is going backwards. We'll operate on, the Blue Rail will operate on DC, DCC, or battery power. 2 amp board with an internal antenna sells for $95. App is free. Now, the nice thing, one of the really nice features about this is you can read and write CVs, two-way communications. And you don't find that a lot on some of the other wireless control systems. Easy to program, extremely easy consisting and speed matching. It will very easily speed match like an ESU decoder in a Loco to a Soundtrax decoder in a Loco, which for a lot of people is a nightmare. There's good email support. I am the person that actually sells these through Dead Rail Installs, www.deadrailinstalls.com. Very easy to hook up. Here's your controller, which is your Apple app, your Apple device. Transmits to the Blue Rail module. Power tracker battery in, 2 wires out to the decoder, and you got all your, everything's in there. So we're going to talk about Deltang real quick. It's not DCC. It's 2.4 gigahertz. Very small receivers. They can operate on 7.4 volt batteries or 2S. Inexpensive system with a controller sells for about $150. Will not control sound decoders because it is not DCC. So there's no CVs. It'll make your train run forward and backwards and control your lights. There, at the present time that I have found, is really no North American support. They will ship directly from the UK, but as I said before, on some of their receivers that are used in model trains, they also do a lot with model airplanes. The components have become obsolete, and they either have to redo them or drop the line. So once again, pretty easy. Charge socket, battery, switch. Here's the receiver, motor. Simple as all get out. Battery info, and I realize I'm going through this pretty quick, and we'll get into the questions and discussions here in a couple minutes. I recommend using the smallest battery possible. I ran into a guy once at the narrow gauge convention up in Seattle, and he had a battery that was the size of a brick, literally. He goes, "Look at this battery." And I said, "Well, what do you possibly put that?" "Oh, I use it in G scale." I said, "Really? Why do you need such a big battery?" "Well, I only have to recharge it once a year." And I said, "So you sell these, right?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, how do you ship them?" "I just put them in the mail." I said, I paused for a second. I said, "Let me ask you a question. When you're sitting on an airplane, would you like one of these underneath your seat?" "Well, no." And I said, that if you get caught shipping these things, your ass is going to be grass, because you're shipping bombs, literally. I said, they need to go surface. And anyway, I never saw him again, never heard from him. Don't know if he's still in business, but it was crazy. Now, charging a battery is no big deal. That's why I say use the smallest battery possible. Use what will fit. Also use a battery that has a protection circuit in it, meaning no RC batteries. They do not have protection circuits in them. The batteries I use are commercial grade medical quality batteries. The protection circuit controls an overcharge, controls a short circuit. If something nasty happens and you have a short circuit, instantly cuts it off, so the battery's not still discharging. And most important for us, it has a low voltage cutoff, and it cuts it off at 3 volts per cell. If you take your batteries down to nothing, you will permanently damage them. 3 volts per cell, their batteries will last for years. And that's why one of the reasons, well, there are many reasons I say don't use RC cells. They're low quality. They're made in factories that are not very high tech, and there's no protection. People will regard this device. Yes.
How do I know if it's an RC battery?
It'll say something stupid, some stupid RC name or high fly or something like that on it. And it will usually have a second set of wires coming out the front with a little connector on it that shows that you're supposed to plug into what is quote unquote balance charge. Because these batteries are so poor quality, they're so out of balance coming from the factory, and every time you run them, they go out of balance. So you need to balance them. Otherwise, your pack will die a premature death. Which to a lot of the RC guys, they don't really care because they're not paying anything for these batteries. They just drop them in the trash on the way out of the flying field. But with the batteries I have, they're more expensive, they're higher quality, and they will cut off at 3 volts per cell, which will make them last for years.
Does this matter what you're saying, regardless of the type of battery? Lithium, or is that true for all
This is
battery
lithium.
types?
I'm talking about lithium.
Okay.
Yeah. Nickel hydride and NiCad, which are still used in certain applications, they don't develop memory. They do develop memory. They're not flammable. They're pretty safe. They don't explode. All of that kind of nifty stuff. But we primarily are using lithium polymer and lithium ion because their energy density is so much greater than NiCad or nickel hydride. They don't take up much space.
Now,
So-
is it possible to add the appropriate electronics to an RC pack, or it's just
No.
better to go the other way?
No, it's not. Because for one thing, you cannot buy the proper size protection modules. You can buy protection modules on eBay, but they're not going to fit properly and they're going to take up more space than what it's worth. The other thing is that the quality of the cells used in RC packs is so poor, you need to balance them.
Gotcha, thank you.
When I used to do factory surveys in China, my colleagues and I would go in and we would wait in the lobby for whoever the honcho was that was going to come out and give us the tour. And we'd look around, and if we saw an RC car, a poster, a body, anything to do with RC, we would know that we would not be doing business with that factory because they would not have invested in the machines and production processes that they would need to have consistent quality packs.
Hey,
And so
Pete,
we would,
can you give a short explanation of what balancing is and why you do it?
yes, sure. Good question. Yeah. Okay. So these let me get out of the screen. Let me stop screen sharing. Pause share.
Up top.
Yeah, it's up there somewhere.
Yeah, it should be a red button that says stop share.
Stop share. There it is.
There
Tiny
we
little
go.
thing. Okay, here we go. Yes. So balancing. When these people would make, when I would go in the back of a factory that's making RC packs or set up to it, there'd be a bunch of little Chinese ladies with their tweezers and twisting stuff up and doing all that kind of stuff. When I would go into the ones that did medical, there would be two guys, one guy at the start of the line that pressed start and another guy at the end of the line that pulled the cells off and put them in a box. And everything else in between was automated. It was clean room. You had to gown up, you had to put your booties on, all that kind of stuff. because dust and dirt were the major enemies. And if they got into your packs, it would contaminate them. Now, there was no way to test them to see if they were contaminated or not. How you would find out they were, and there was dust in there, is about 6 months later, these batteries would turn into little footballs because they would swell up. And I would go into some of my customers and distributors, and they'd show me these batteries. They weren't mine, but they bought them from some Chinese outfit, and they worked for a while, and then they swell up and then they don't work anymore. Didn't catch on fire, no damage, nothing. They just didn't work because they were contaminated. But back to balancing. So when they make these, the level of voltage and capacity is real wide on RC stuff. It just is. And that's because the handmade and variables and all this stuff. When you do it on automated systems, the level is very tight, very tight. So when I'm testing batteries, for instance, if I get more than about maybe a 20 milliamp difference in like if I'm doing a 3-cell pack and any cell has more than 20 milliamps difference, I remove that cell because it's a little bit out of balance. Not a lot, but a little bit. Too much for me. And so what happens when these RC batteries, they're using a pretty high rate of discharges, and they don't all discharge at the same time. So you might end up with say a 3 or 4 cell pack where you've got like one cell is completely discharged, another's got 30% in it, another maybe have 40% in, another has a little less in. They're all over the map as far as the balance goes. And you want them all to discharge and charge at the same time at the same rate and reach the same state of capacity fully charged. Okay, so when you plug a charger in, it's looking for whatever it's going to be the lowest capacity. It raises it up, it gets it there, and it shuts off because it sees that it's full. Well, the other batteries may not be full. They may be partially full. So what the balance does is it looks at each cell individually and makes sure that it is fully charged or discharged. And that's pretty much the short version of balancing. Now, with commercial cells, you don't need to do that because they're already balanced and they stay balanced. And we're not doing high rate discharges either, which has a lot to do with it. Did that answer the question?
Yep.
Okay.
We have Bob Butler in the Zoom chat. How do you program the recorder?
How do I program
The decoder?
the decoder or discharger? I'm not sure.
I'm assuming he's talking about the decoder on the locomotive.
Oh, the same way you do. Well, if you're using Blu-ray, you just do it through the Blu-ray app. Same with Tam Valley. You're using your existing controller that for DCC you program it, and with the CVP AirWire, you can program it through their T5000 controller. All you're doing is taking the signal that would normally go through the track and it's going through the airwaves. Everything else is the same.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So Bob, let me ask you this. Do you use the same battery for O scale, G scale, HO, and N, or
Nope.
is there a different battery? Or
Yep. Good question, man. I had to send you a check on that one. You led me right into it. Okay, so let's see if I can do this with my other camera. Bear with me for just a second. Okay, so this is my little 250 battery, 250 milliamps, 11.1 volts, tiny little guy. I use that primarily because from when I'm running stuff, it's just easier to deal with. I got another one here that I sell a lot of all of these sizes of batteries. And if I can get it out of the package, cleverly packed.
That's your 450?
This is a 450,
Right.
11.1 volt, 450 milliamps.
Can I put a 30-second story in here?
Sure. Who's giving me a story?
Lloyd.
Oh, hi Lloyd. How are you? I thought
Okay.
that. Good. Yeah, please.
Okay, I put a 450, hooked it up to a Blackstone K, and ran it on the bench until it exhausted itself. It went just a hair over 3.5 hours.
Yeah,
And that was
people are
just
surprised.
continuous running. Now, it didn't have much load, but even when I run the load, I always get at least 2 hours
Yeah.
or more out of running time on the battery.
And that was one of the things that we were really trying to get. That was the number, is 2 hours. And guys say, well, my op session lasts for more than 2 hours. I said, yeah, but how long is your train actually running? It's not running in a circle, you know. So you got some dwell time and some sitting time. So yeah, 2 hours is a good number. And I know the 450 fits real nice in your H13 gondolas, right?
Right.
So this is the 450 and this is the 500, where it's only 50 milliamps difference, but it's a size issue. Okay, you got a little bit more height on it, but a little bit less length, and the just slightly more width. I really look at width pretty heavily because a lot of guys are using these in HO, and I want them to fit in there. But we get some guys that put them like in a dummy unit, and they just set them like that. They set them upright because they usually have more height than width, and especially if it's a Jeep or something. Here's another one that's an 850. A lot of the O scale guys are using this 850. And once again, this would run an HO scale train for 5 hours, maybe 6. But we go, by what fits, And here's another nifty one. This is a 14.8 volts. So this is a 4 cell. The rest of these are 3 cells. This is a CVP AirWire battery rated at 3.4 amps or 3,400 milliamps. We sell a lot of these to the G scale guys. Some of the O scale guys are putting them in steam tenders. Once again, this will run stuff for a long time because we find most of the motors that are coming out in anything recent are CAN motors. They just don't draw much current, even in O scale. Even in some of the G scale, some of the Bachmann stuff just doesn't draw a lot of current. So 3400s are a nice battery. These are all made with Samsung cells, so they're quality. They're not some no-name Chinese company. Protection circuit on them. They work great.
Pete, let me ask you a question.
Certainly.
I run brass O-scale trolleys.
Okay.
Can I use the smallest battery you had shown there and run it for how long?
That's hard to say because it totally depends on what motor you're running. Are you running a CAN motor?
No, I'm running Northwest short line under floor motors.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Not a problem.
So you're running Stanton trucks?
Not Stanton. I forget the name of it now. Before Stanton, what did Northwest make?
Well, Northwest makes the Stanton.
No, but before that.
PDT.
No, come again. Another one.
There was a Black Beetle or something that
Yeah, it's like the Black Beetle, except it's for O scale.
Tenshoto did. I don't know if they made one, but I don't know if it was O scale.
You're talking about magic carpets?
That's
Magic carpets.
I use 2 of them in each one of my trolleys.
Oh, well, the best way to figure out is if you can measure the stall current on them. Now they shouldn't be drawing a lot of amperage, so you should probably be okay.
So it would run it for an hour or so, right?
Oh, easy, yeah, and I can, because your trolley is open, let me know and I can make up a battery for you that isn't same amount of cells, but isn't of this shape. It isn't high. It could be flat, and you can disguise it somehow.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So you can really design a battery to fit the space.
Yes, lithium polymer comes in absolutely any size you want. Bluetooth headphones have lithium polymer batteries and tiny little things. they can make them absolutely any size you want, from the size that will run a bus to the size that will run a Bluetooth headphone. Now, saying that, yes, they can do that, but they're going to want you to buy probably at least 10,000 cells.
Oh, okay.
So that makes it a little more difficult, because I can't just call up my local or my Chinese sources and say, hey, I need 100 packs of this, 100 packs of that. They say, well, we're not going to run them unless you buy 10,000 cells. So what I do is I piggyback on top of other people's orders. My factories will get a hold of me and say, hey, we're running that cell that you're running the cells that you use, and you want to buy a couple hundred of them, go ahead, we'll just tack them on the end of the order. And that's the kind of relationship I have with the two factories I work with.
You say you go for a 2-hour runtime, and then after that runtime, how long does it take to recharge the battery?
You can get about 80% into it in about maybe 30, 40 minutes.
So for a runtime, maybe if you would have what, 2 batteries, so that if you needed more than 2 hours, you would just replace the battery, right?
That's what I do. I just swap out the battery. It takes about a minute.
You can have a battery break during your operating session, kind of in the middle.
No, while it's sitting there, you pull into a yard. If you need to switch it out, you just switch it out. What I do in some cases is I have the other one already in a tender or in a gondola or in a boxcar, and it's just a matter of unplugging it and plugging the other one in. And it's already on the track, and you just hook the couplers and away you go. Now those are, I'm using a tender car, which may or may not look like a tender, but that's what it really is. And
Yeah. That's interesting. Thank you.
Let me show you, let me finish up on batteries here real quick. So what I recommend, if you can, is to make a battery like Lloyd has, so it's removable and you can just switch it out. But some guys that have diesels can't do that. So what we try to get them to do is take your battery and we put a charge port somewhere where you can't see it, and you just plug your charger into the charge port and charge your battery up while it's inside. Not quite as good, but it works really well. One of the things that guys say is, well, I'll just make a charging track. Yes, you can do that. It highly complicates everything, because then you have to clean your track, and you especially have to clean the wheels on your Loco to get it to properly charge. It will take longer. To me, it's a pain in the ass. It's easier to just plug in, and then you're done.
We got a question over on YouTube. Aberton Engineering wants to know, do you have any N scale packs?
Well, the packs don't come in scale. They come in what will fit. I guess to rephrase that question, have I ever done any N scale? Yes. I've sold kits to guys. There is a way to use this 250 battery laid out a little bit differently, and guys have used it in a double stack container, and they've simply widened the bottom of the container, dropped the battery in. They access the top of it. They just take the top of the container off, unplug it, either plug a new battery in or plug the charge in. So yes, you could do that. It's a little tricky because you got your battery in one, and you've got probably your receiver in another one. So you're going to have a little train there, but yes, it can be done. For N-scale guys, I recommend that they use a locomotive that already has DCC and sound in it, because then you only have to run 2 wires to the back of the locomotive, and it will control everything. So yes, it can be done.
Can you use like a dummy locomotive, or is that too small?
You could but you're not going to fit everything into anything in N scale. There's going to be more than one car or locomotive. But yes, you could use a dummy.
All right.
I tell the guys, if you're running modern, do it in a 60-foot box car with a removable roof. a little 40-foot boxcar gondola just isn't going to cut it.
Pete, how hot do the batteries get?
They do not get hot. There's no heat. If it gets warm, then remove it and set it outside because something's wrong.
Okay.
So,
The NiCads used to get warm, and that was one of the ways they could tell whether they're fully charged when they start to heat up. Lithium's not like that. They shouldn't get warm at all.
Pete,
Yes.
bottom line here, what is the cost to get started?
Depends on which system you use. Let's just take Blue Rail for an example, an HO. The board is $95. You need an on-off switch, $12. You need a charger. I sell a good charger for charging these for $45. You only need to buy that once. Blue Rail, you use it from an iOS device, so you probably already have that. If you don't have an iOS, if you're an Android user, you can go on eBay and buy older iPhones, 6S and above. They don't need to be hooked up to any phone service or anything. They just need to have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. You can get those for $30, $40. And then you've got yourself a dedicated controller. Decoder, just a normal decoder, what do they cost, $100 or so? Or if you're doing basic, you don't want sound, then your board controls it. So you've already bought the board. Battery, $40. So, add it up. And everybody's different. So there's not just like one size fits all.
Right.
You want to go CVP, their receivers are $100, let's say, for the smaller one. The T5000 sells for $159. That is your controller. You need a battery, same battery cost, about $40. Asking me to do this off the top of my head is, I know I'm forgetting stuff, but anyway.
Yeah.
So you can add it up, first time going, $400, $500. Now, how to save money on doing this? And remember this, because this will save you dough. You do what we call power cars. And a power car is simply a car trailing behind your locomotive that has a battery in it and it has a receiver in it. Very simple. These two components go in there. You get your locomotive, already has DCC in it. So you've got your locomotive address already done. You run 2 wires out of your power car into the back of your connector that's coming out the back of the locomotive, and you're in business. Duncan McCrae, that owns Tam Valley Depot, powers his whole layout, both HO and HO3, with power cars. So he only has to have a few power cars to run all of his locomotives. Doesn't have to convert each locomotive. And if you want to get real slick, you could put a switch inside the locomotive that switches either to track power or battery power.
Do you have a DRS that you can put down there next to that?
Yeah, let's see.
Because,
Yeah,
most of us are already model railroaders. We already have a DCC system somewhere.
this is
And-
so this is a
you know,
DRS one
Yeah.
right here. And that's the Tam Valley one, and it runs with an existing DCC system. Lloyd's had really good luck with it. How many, you got a big layout. How many transmitters do you have in your layout?
Well, I have one when I'm running at home.
Okay.
When I'm running at the club, I need 2.
Yeah, so you can, so if you've got a couple rooms, whatever, you just add an extra transmitter, and that's all you really need. Transmitter costs $69.99. This little board is $69.99.
And the
Really-
transmitter is so simple. It comes with spring clips. You just clip it onto the rail somewhere, or at the end of a siding, and you're powered up.
Yeah, it's real easy, and it's a lot of fun. I belong to an 0-30 modular club in Southern California, and back when we had train shows, there'd be maybe 2-3 of us running dead rail on the layout. And all of a sudden we'd look around and we'd hear all this swearing coming from under the layout. And we'd realize that there was something wrong with the DCC system. And nobody noticed because we were running trains. The only guys that weren't running trains were either trying to fix it or waiting. But that was the only way we really knew, is we would just listen for swearing. It was great. Anyway, so this is the DRS-1 receiver from Tam Valley. This is the Blue Rail receiver, which is a little bit, just slightly larger, not much to it. Height-wise, about the same. This is the CVP 15, 1.5 amp rating. So you can see it's a little bit bigger, but not that much. With the Blue Rail, you can put a jumper in here and make it so it is a motor decoder. And then there are these other tabs are for your light functions. Or you can run your 2 wires out here. Red and the black comes from the battery, yellow and white goes to the decoder. That's it. And it just simply plugs in like that, and that's how it comes.
So Pete,
Yes.
if I had say a lock sound decoder in my locomotive,
Yep.
and I wanted to run sound, it would run sound,
Yep.
all the lights. So will that receiver take essentially all the signals that a lock sound or a soundtracks or
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and convert those in?
Yes, it does. All you're doing is taking your signals that would normally be coming through your track, and you're sending them through the rails. Signals are all the same.
And then the other trick is to fit a battery into either your locomotive or a car that's very close.
Yes. Yes. This 450 battery coupled will fit great in I like to put them in gondolas, a high-sided gondola, and then you just put some load over the top that's easily removable, and you're in business. Or you can put them in a boxcar.
I'd like to be in touch with you fairly soon, please.
Okay, and I can't tell who's speaking.
I'm sorry, I'm Nick, AMS Nick.
Okay, yeah, you can get a hold of me at info at deadrailinstalls.com, and I will put that in the chat.
Thank you.
Pete, the recharging, do you have a plug in the gondola somewhere where you just plug in the recharger or something? How do you recharge the battery? You have to take it out?
Yeah, but it takes, as Lloyd said, he can do his switches out in a minute.
You just pull the load off, you disconnect a 2-wire connector, plug another 2-wire connector in, stick the battery down in the car, put the load back on top of it, and you're done.
So, and that recharges the battery?
No,
No, that replaces the battery with a charged one.
So the battery has to come out and then be plugged into a charger somewhere else.
Or you can, like I have locomotives where I've actually wired a plug into the back, and what I do is I just take the whole loco over and plug it in to the charger. That to me is a pain in the ass. I'd much rather just move the battery.
I got you. I understand.
Yeah, that's the easiest way, is to just remove the battery. But some guys, let's say they have their equipment in a B unit, they really can't do that because you have to take the shell off. So we put a little charge port in there somewhere underneath it where you can't see it, and then you just plug the charger into that.
Gotcha.
Now, saying one thing is we recommend you use an on-off switch, because otherwise you'll just drain your battery needlessly. And the battery and the charge port has to be on the other side of the on-off switch, meaning the input side. Can't be on the output side, because it'll still charge your battery. It'll just take longer, and it drains energy into the electronics.
I've got a recap question. This is Jim Murphy on how the magic happens. When you signal the controller to increase speed or ring the bell, that signal goes from the controller wireless to where?
To the receiver, to one of these receivers here.
Okay, the receiver is mounted in the locomotive or the car behind.
Yes, yes.
So it's
Yeah.
all a Wi-Fi signal that goes that.
It's not
Oh,
Wi-Fi.
No, it's
well,
radio.
it's either radio or Bluetooth. None of this is Wi-Fi.
radio or Bluetooth. Okay, fine. But it doesn't go through the rails.
No.
So that's,
But if you're running the Tam Valley, you can be running trains through the rails and dead rail through the airwaves at the same time.
okay. Well, you don't have to clean airwaves. You got my vote.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim?
Yeah,
When I'm at the club and we're running our narrow gauge stuff, what I do is I have, I take a converted HO SW900 switcher that had the wheel squoze into narrow gauge. And
Yeah.
I throw a battery car behind it and I put the cleaning cars on it. And I run that back and forth over all of the narrow gauge track so that all the guys who have regular locos can, then just, when we're ready to run the session, just put them on the track and go.
Right.
And,
Wow.
that's one of the great conveniences.
There's a guy here in Southern California named Bob Mitchell, and he's a big Digitrax guy. And when he was building his layout, he said, I want to do one dead rail train. I said, well, Bob, you've got all this money in DCC. He said, I'm making a cleaning train. And he did. And he made a dead rail cleaning train that he runs around his layout before he has a big op session, and works great. He only wanted one. But it's been working out very well for him for the last few years.
how much,
Something to think about.
how much,
Decides to convert his fleet then of all those other locomotives, what would be involved in that dozen locomotive conversion when he finally sees the light? Or like I might.
Well, he hasn't seen the light yet. So, I mean, a lot of guys that I've got all this money in my DCC and my wiring and all that other stuff. And, great. You're probably not going to want to convert every one of your locos because you've already put in all the time and expense to make your track DCC. But doing one or two, it's pretty easy. And what I tell guys like that have a lot of locos is use the power car concept, because then you don't have to convert your locos at all. All you have to do is run 2 wires out the back and you're in business. Saves a lot of money.
So is it like the orange and gray wire that you run to the motor, or the
Nope,
black?
red and black wire that's coming. You clip your power pickups from the rails.
Red and black, okay.
Yeah. And all you do is hook up your connector, run it out the back of your loco. I use very tiny little connectors, even smaller than these. Little 2-pin connectors. Soundtrack sells them. They work pretty good. They're a bit expensive,
yeah.
but for size wise, they work really well. So you got 2 wires running in, and that runs to your decoder where the power pickup would go, and that's it. That's all you have to do.
Pete,
Yes.
couple questions. On the Blue Rail system, how far back can you go with an iPhone? I have some.
6S.
I have some 4s.
It probably won't work because the apps won't update right.
Okay. And the next question is, so you have a locomotive that is DCC and you decide you want to also have it be battery powered.
Mhm.
Do you do it like with a switch that converts you said to cut the 2 wires of power. Can you do that with a switch as well?
You can, yes. And if you want to be able to run it with track power or battery power, then you put a switch in.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, when a guy clips the wires to the power pickups, I also tell them to make sure they insulate it, because those wires flopping around in there are dangerous. But yeah, you can put a switch in if you want to be able to go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
how much maintenance is involved in this once you've installed it, Pete?
None. Charge your battery. That's really it. Charge the battery. Everything else is done. I mean, there's really no maintenance.
Okay.
You know, if you want to get the crud off your wheels, then yeah, you can do that, but that's more cosmetic than electronic functioning. So like a couple of things for chargers, I use RC charger. I use a specific RC charger because it's inexpensive. But with all of the pandemic and the lack of flights from China, they've gotten pretty hard to find. I had to have some shipped in from Hong Kong a week ago, but not all RC chargers are appropriate for charging these types of batteries. You need one that is programmable down to about 0.2 amps or 200 milliamps. Some of those cheap $15 ones are set to charge large batteries like this, and they have a fixed charge rate of usually an amp or an amp and a half. That type of charge rate will cook off any of these batteries. They just won't work. They won't last very long because it's way overcharging them. Like for instance, this 850 milliamp battery, I charge it at 400 milliamps or 1/2 C. The 250s, I just charge them at 200 and I haven't had any problem with them. So I charge them kindly is what I call it. The RC guys that are charging them at 10 C, that's not very kind to the battery, but then it is what it is. So
Pete, I buy a battery and I've got this charger I bought. How on earth do I know how much to charge the battery?
when you buy a battery from me, I include instructions on what the charge rate is.
Okay.
So,
Depending on the charger you get, it has a display and it actually tells you.
yeah,
I mean, I use a, what is this? It's a high-tech X1.
yep. X1
And
AC Plus, yes.
yeah, and it's a really simple thing to set up. It's got 4 buttons on the top, and you just do what it tells you to do. And when you want to test the battery, you hold down the button until it comes up and says test, and then it tells you how much is in the battery. And then if you want to charge it, you push the button again, and it charges it. And when it tells you it's fully charged, it stops charging it and just waits for you to unhook it.
So I don't have to worry about how much to charge it. I just press the button and it says charge, and then I just press the button and it does it.
That's right.
As long as you have the
Yeah.
correct charger.
Yeah, the correct charger, and all these programmable chargers are automatic, so they'll cut off when your battery's fully charged.
I think that charger was about 65, 70 bucks. something
Yeah,
like
it
that.
was, and unfortunately, they've discontinued that charger and gone to much more expensive ones. Because I was selling those for a while, and then they discontinued it, so I moved over to a different one called an IMAX B6 AC.
And it does the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these RC chargers all come out of the same factory in China. The software is all the same, it's just that the cases are different.
I got you.
I got to tell you guys, it's the easiest damn thing to do, and it just works. I mean, you're talking 2 wires in, 2 wires out, and it's pretty hard to fuck that up.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's just simple. It's just the investment, and a lot of it's the mindset, but once you start doing this, it's like, why am I like wiring track and doing jumpers and going through all this other stuff?
I have a friend out in Hemet, and he's got an ON30 layout, and it's been a while since I've been out in Southern California.
Hey, Balzer?
He's the guy.
Yeah,
And he was showing me some engines back several years ago,
Mhm.
and he had all the equipment inside like a ON30 Climax or Shea or whatever.
Yep.
right. It all fits.
It'll fit in an ON30.
Mhm.
Yeah, he had in an ON30 Shea or Climax, you just make the fuel bunker be a little bit higher, and this little 250 will drop right in there.
Right, right.
Yeah,
But that's a pretty small space in there. I mean.
it is.
Yeah.
It is. That's why the critical dimension is height.
Mhm.
So if you make the fuel bunker just a, half, 3/4 of an inch higher, you're in business.
Pete,
And you can pull off the load.
Pete, what's the next step with this technology?
That's a good question. People keep talking about batteries getting smaller. And everybody wants something that'll run forever and be the size of the head of a pin, but you got physics involved. I keep getting people send me articles about the next greatest battery, and then you never hear about it again. And the critical thing to this is being able to mass produce the batteries. How I got involved in visiting factories in China is I was working for a company in Germany who invested hundreds of thousands of euros into making the 2032 lithium battery rechargeable, which was a great idea. And there were some Chinese that were starting to have some success in it. Man, they built these things in the lab and they were just tremendous. Then they built this whole big equipment to do automation, and their rate was about 80%. And you need about a 99% rate to make any money on automation. They abandoned that whole project, just chucked the equipment, took the loss on it, and sent 2 of us to China to go find manufacturing partners. That's how we got to A, go to China, B, tour all these factories and eat a lot of good Chinese lunches. And develop good relationships with the Chinese, because if you have a personal relationship with you, they're your friends for life. And that helped me a lot with being able to do this stuff, is because I know who the good guys are over there. And, when I go to CES every year, I work the
Let us out
booths.
there to go get.
Yeah, because there's so many.
You have lettuce out there still.
There's so many battery manufacturers in China, it's just hard to tell. I used to work also with the Apple battery guys. And while they were somewhat secretive, they gave us a lot of good ideas about how to survey factories. When somebody went to Apple, the Apple guys would just say, okay, you start at your back door, incoming, you take a video nonstop all the way through to the end where you're packing them up. And then you send us that video. And we wanted to see all the equipment they had and all this stuff. And they could tell by the equipment they had whether these guys were going to even be in the ballpark. And if they were, then they'd send Apple guys down to look at the factory. And Apple is very selective, and they do business with very few factories. So anyway, but we learned what to look for in factories, what kind of equipment that they needed to get consistent quality cells out of there.
Pete, let me ask
I see Phil is asking a question.
Yeah.
Yep.
Phil, yeah, DRS, Tam Valley DRS1, I sell them. Yep, I have them. Here's one right here.
Yeah, my point was that on your website, it's not on there.
It should be.
I just looked.
Oh, I'll have to look again. I will check that out as soon as I get off.
So that was why I asked the question, in case other people looked that might.
Oh, thanks. It's funny, I have a website, but I hardly ever look at it. I better look at it now. We redid it.
I sent you a direct comment. You need to pay real attention to your website if you want to have people come to the website to buy stuff. It's hard, like there's not pictures and descriptions of things when you click on it. Like the charger, when you go to the charger you're selling, you got to text the charger and you can buy it, but you can't click on it and see a picture of it, see the specs of it. So what I ended up doing was copying that and putting it in a browser and going look at it, which by the way offered me 150 people who could sell it to me for the same price or less. So you need to get a web guy. It's the challenge for all of us, our businesses, as you grow it, because your website represents you a whole lot more than you do personally in the future.
I'll tell you about the 150 guys that can sell it to you. There's 2 versions. There's actually 3 versions. 2 of them don't work for this application. So anyway, I appreciate that. I will look at it.
Yeah, but the problem is that there's no way to know that from the website and say, oh, there are 2 versions. You have to buy this version from me.
I don't
Because-
say that because they don't have to, they could buy whatever they want to buy. On the front page of my website, it says, do not buy the V2. The V2 is the prominent one out there, but it will not work for these. So,
The best thing is just to phone our friend Pete.
I went through my business voicemail yesterday. It had 47 messages in it, and 3 were related to dead rail.
Pete, let me ask you a question. You talked
Certainly.
about the battery technology. What about the other equipment that goes with this? What's the next step for this technology in total, not just the battery part?
Looking ahead, that's a we're working a lot with the Bluetooth, Blue Rail type of thing, and we're somewhat hampered by the old DCC technology because it's got to be able to work with that. So we can't do leaps and bounds because it wouldn't work for people. The miniaturizing, making stuff smaller, making it be a bit more efficient. We've redone both the Tam Valley and the Blue Rail boards have been redone a couple times just to make them smaller. They all still work and they're all backward compatible, but we're just trying to be more efficient that way. As far as giant leaps forward, I'm
Pete,
I'm not sure.
Pete, I'd suggest that I think the big leap forward is going to be to adopt the other part from, you've done the RC cars, the other part is the drones. And the drones have an HD camera feed they put into the wireless transmit.
Yep.
And if you could basically, even if you left the control side all as DCC, but basically had a video input in the receiver that would feed back up over to wherever the center node is and pull the video off, you now could send that to an app or something. So you actually could have this very interesting way to add video in. I think that's going to be the next big dimension, is how do you add video in? And you can't send it through the rails. You have to send it wirelessly.
Right. Yeah,
It's-
that's a good point.
I think it's going to be, the minute you can plug in one of these little tiny cameras and put it in your cab and plug it into one of these boards, and on the other end get the video out, and it maybe sends up, because it's packetized, you can actually have it go to the cloud and have it show up on your phone.
Right.
I think it's transformational. If you think about COVID operations, how brilliant would that be to be able to have that effectively in your engines? So
That would be great. I guess my question would be, how much space do the components take up? The camera takes up no space, but what about what you'd have to add to the board? Because we're all trying to, keep this stuff as small as possible so it fits. But that's something worth looking into, and I will.
cool.
It's been
Yeah.
it's been,
Quick question. What is your website?
Deadrailinstalls.com, INSTALLS.com.
Okay, that's what I thought it was, but I tried going to it and it comes up with an error message.
The link is missing in the end. The way it shows up in the in the chat is deadrailsinstalls.com. There's missing an N. It's installs.
I guess I typed that wrong. Let me go back in there. Yeah, because I just pulled it up.
That's okay.
Yep, the missing N works.
I'm just
Thank
looking
you.
at the homepage and it has Blue Rail, Tam Valley, and CVP right on the front with links to the pages.
Pete, why are you limited with this technology to the DCC? I guess NMRA stuff. Why is that a problem? Why can't you just bypass that totally?
you can.
We could, but then we would be inventing new technology where we're trying to integrate into existing technology. We could get early adopters that want to do this new stuff and just forget the NMRA, DCC, and certifications and all that kind of stuff.
Why is that a bad thing not to not do that?
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just, do we want to be, early adopters to develop new technology? I'm not sure that's what we want to do right yet.
You might want to look at the manufacturers. It's not necessarily DCC. It's the sound file for your K3 or your K7
Right.
or your GP60 or whatever. It's those sound files. Those manufacturers have an awful lot of money into that.
Yep. Yeah, and originally, this technology, the Blue Rail technology, for instance, this is what Bachman uses in their Easy app, and they've sold over 10,000 locos with the Easy app in it. So it's proven technology. The original boards that came out, the Blue Rail put out, did have sound in them, but it was just real generic sound. And we've decided to up the ante and take the sound out, because we would have to keep supporting that sound. And every time there was an app update, we would have to put a lot of work into making sure the sounds worked. So we decided to go with using existing decoders with existing sounds and sound files.
If I'm just running straight DC, how do I get sound?
You don't.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you can still run a decoder on DC, but it's all wonky.
Yeah.
They used to sell soundboards, and you could just use a soundboard.
Right.
I'm not sure that Soundtracks doesn't still sell them.
I don't think they do. I think you can wire their decoders to just be sound and not motor, but I don't think they sell just specific soundboards.
Pete, one question I hear is when you have signaling and block detection, and a lot of that is relying on the locomotive and where it is, and it's the fact that it's drawing current is used to drive a lot of that. What do you tell people who have a lot of signaling on the layout when they're running a dead rail locomotive?
Well, there's other ways they're going to have to detect it. I mean, they're going to have to detect where the locos are, because you're not going to get it feedback from the rails like they're used to having.
I think you put a simple resistor across the any of the wheels, like in the tender or something like that, and take care of the, or like on the locomotive, and take care of that detection.
Yeah, if you're looking for proximity, just resistors across the wheels will give you occupancy.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got occupancy, depending upon electronics, it sounds like you got your layout already wired. I'm not sure the dead rail gives you a lot of advantage, but it gives you some.
Yeah, because I run resistors in all my cabooses. So at our HO club, we can tell where the end of the train is as opposed to the beginning.
There's a question from the Zoom chat from Harry Primus. What advice do you have for people who have not caught up to DCC?
DCC is pretty well. I mean, you can run the Blue Rail without. You can run it in basic mode. You don't need DCC. You can run it DC, DCC, or battery. I say invest in DCC. It's not that expensive.
There was a guy on actually a while back that had a product called Locofy, which is basically just a receiver, and it does Wi-Fi, and you run an app, and it's the phone. I think it only ran on Android.
Correct.
But that was an interesting concept, because basically the only thing you have, if you've got a DC layout and all you want to do is have a powered loco, you could do that and power it off the DC, and you just had to put the receiver in. It was an interesting concept, because you could get by with not having to go the full dead rail. The other option is just to go directly to dead rail, and then you don't have to rewire your layout.
You could take this 5-amp board right here and you could run a whole layout off of that. You'd be back to kind of the DC thing, but because you'd be running one train at a time, but you could power a layout off of that.
Unless you use diodes, then you can run two.
Yeah, you could.
Because that's what I do with my trolley.
Yeah. What do you power it with? What are you controlling it with?
A Lionel ZW with a rectifier.
Okay. Okay.
Please, 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 you're talking to somebody that still lives in the 50s.
We've had trouble with some of the Lionel transformers that are throwing massive spikes back into our boards. Makes them light up.
I think that was an interesting question. The idea of someone who's got a DC layout. What are the low cost ways to be able to have one or two engines running on that layout with sound and kind of more modern without having to go to the full cost of putting in a DCC system or the lowest cost? And so dead rail is definitely an interesting option to do that.
It is, because when, like with the Tam Valley system, you can use the DCC and just do it wirelessly. You don't have to wire anything on your layout at all.
Yeah, but you still got to buy a DCS. You know, you got to buy a brain.
Yeah. Yep.
You got to buy a transformer. You know, and
you can get an NCE power cab for less than $200.
Right. Why not?
But in some ways, the
rail boards in
the CBP AirWire. So for someone who's got a DC layout, the AirWire might almost make the most sense, because you could buy the little handheld controller and use that, and and do this the same thing where exactly it's. I guess what I'm saying is I think there's a lot of the choice may be impacted by the kind of environment you're working in. If you already got DCC, might make more sense. So I think that DC transition is a very interesting, because a lot of I end up talking to a lot of guys that have, or modelers that have that kind of situation, still have DC.
So with the AirWire, what do I need other than that black box with the big silver knob?
You need that. You need a receiver like that.
Yeah.
And you need a battery and an on-off switch.
Okay, so it's all in the handheld.
Yeah, yeah.
Just like the big hammerheads.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. For my controllers, I have a rheostat and an on-off switch, and I use a diode so that I can run two trolleys, one from each hand. So to go to battery power now, I got to have a battery. I've got to have one of the little things with the wires coming out. Can I still use my controllers? What else do I need?
You can use a ZW. If you're doing the blue rail, you can use a ZW, because the receiver will connect with your one side of your ZW or the other side.
And my two handmade controllers that I'm using now, I could still use those?
I don't know what you mean by handmade controllers.
It's all it's got in it is a rheostat to control the power.
Probably not, but your ZW would work.
The ZW could work to power the rail. And that's it. But
not power. It could power the rail. So forget the ZW, because if I'm running blue rail, if I'm running dead rail, that powers.
Oh, you don't need that. Yeah.
That powers my trolleys, right?
Right.
So now I've got powering my trolleys through my magic carpets, and I don't have a controller then that I can use, right? I'd have to buy two of those controllers.
You can buy one. If you're doing blue rail, you buy one iPhone, one used iPhone.
I got you.
And if you're doing the AirWire, you can. I assume it's like DCC. You can control multiple locos at the same time.
Yes.
With their unit, so you could basically you switch between them. You've got a button and it goes to the previous one, like on your TV. When you go to the last channel, you go to the last loco. So you just click the button, go to the last loco, change the speed, click the button, go to the last loco, change the speed, or it's a stack. So one controller can easily control two locos, or two trolleys. But what you can now have is you can still run one trolley with DC if you want to, and have one or two trolleys that you're running with the
blue rail,
dead rail, whichever one you choose separately, because they're not getting the power off the rails.
Correct.
And what's cool in O is, I mean, the batteries are like 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot boxes. So if you've got a baggage area with a little styrene, you can actually make it so the battery could actually look like a scenery element in the middle. Now then it wouldn't be removable and you'd have to think about how you manage charging. But depending on how you use it, that could be an interesting thought process.
Sure.
Oh,
That would
absolutely.
work.
And see, I've got combine trolleys that I've got right now. So I can
Exactly.
easily
I'm
put
thinking this exactly. The battery could become a piece of baggage in the baggage compartment. And then you got a
absolutely.
place to hide the board, and basically the dead rail is built into the car, the unit itself.
Absolutely. That's why I was wondering about having something on the bottom of my trolley where I could just plug in the recharger.
Yeah, exactly.
you
That
can
would
do
work
that.
fine. Yep.
So then it just becomes a part of the model that I'm building. I mean, I've got it and it's there.
And if you want to get really tricky, you can take the baggage door and you can make that the face of glue that to the face of the battery and literally just pull the whole baggage door out and replace it with another.
And then replace it with another battery on another door. Isn't that? I'll be darned.
You ought to be glad you had me on. I could see the wheels are turning there, Jim.
Yeah,
well, I tell you, I learn stuff from you guys all the time.
I see the smoke rising.
So Pete, one other question. So one of the things that have looked at doing, they've done with the supercapacitors and a keep alive, is you can actually distribute those. So if you want, and so I'm curious about are the battery packs. Is it any way reasonable to think about that they could be distributed, or is it just never worth thinking about opening up one of those packs?
You mean distributing the cells around to make them fit?
Distributing the cells.
I do some custom packs for guys. Like I actually build this black one here because I can't get. I really like the cells, and they have a ridiculous minimum order for building packs, so I just build them. But yeah, I can build them, and I've got cells for all of these. The blue ones are all built by my Chinese factories, but I have cells, so I can build packs any way you want them. So yes, you can distribute the cells around the where they fit and run wires, and it's all the same.
Cool.
Yeah, I've done it before for some guys.
So did the trolleys have battery packs on them in the real world?
I believe they did.
Yeah, absolutely. I can put them on the bottom of the car.
Yeah, so why don't you just use one of these on the bottom of the car, make it your regular battery pack.
I could do that. Cover it with, decorate it up. I could do that.
Sure.
Absolutely.
You could even have one pack running each motor.
That would be even better.
Would one battery pack be enough to power two of the magic carpets?
Yes, but I probably would use this one, the little bit larger capacity one than the 250.
Okay. I got
Yeah, but it would. You could use two of the 250s because they're balanced and they're going to discharge at the same time, depending on what the current draw is of each of your motorized trucks.
Yes. Yep. Love it. I love it. Pete, thank you so much for being here. I certainly appreciate it. I know we've kept you a long time tonight, but I sure do appreciate you coming.
Hey,
and I'm looking forward to you coming back and talking to us about painting and weathering, because I think
I'll be happy to do that.
I think that's going to be great too. But listen, anybody interested in this, please contact Pete. I think there's a lot that I've still got to learn, but Pete, thank you so very much. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been a great discussion. I love the questions. They were really good questions. People were, really thinking about this, and look forward to coming back. I think I'm on one of your train shows here coming up in March, aren't I?
Yes, sir, you are. You're on it.
So
and you're also giving a door prize in it.
Yeah, I am. I have a nice door sitting outside.